Welcome to Side 7 of Assertive Communication Skills with Carol Price, a special career track presentation. As we begin this side, we continue to look at passive people, how they might sound, what words they would choose, what their body language might look like. Once again, let's rejoin Carol.
Let's review what we know about passive people. Number one, do you see them as fearful? Yeah. Fearful of what?
Confrontation.
Confrontation. Very good. Second, they invite your sympathy and try to make you feel guilty about the way you're treating them. Anybody have someone like that in your family? What are they called?
My mother.
Your mother, yeah. And the truth is they're usually called mothers or martyrs or the two combined, depending on which one you really have. They are reluctant to take on anything new. In addition, they won't tell you what they think, but they'll hope or they'll hint you'll know. Those passives will give you accountability for their happiness or sadness or anger. Passive people would like you to believe you have ruined their day, their week, or their life, or that if you will do things the way they want you to do them, that you can make them happy. Sandra obviously exhibited a lot of those passive behaviors. What did you hear this time? Yes?
A lot of stammering.
Ooh, good. A lot of stammering, starting, stopping, back and forth. Excellent ear. What else did you hear? Jane?
A very small voice.
Ooh, it got tiny, didn't it? And did you hear it getting smaller and smaller as she went on? Good, yeah. Did you hear anything else? Please?
She'd say, whatever you want.
And she said that a number of times as well, didn't she? Sure. You're picking up real well on those vocal behaviors that are giving you hints and cues about who and what they are. Although she was brought into that room as an equal partner, how do I know that? As an equal partner, how do I know she was brought in that way? Please?
She was given the opportunity to take the equal share of work.
Absolutely. There was nothing saying, I'm the boss, I get the good stuff, you get the lousy stuff. The boss was actually saying here, we will divide this in half, dependent on task, not depending on I get paid more than you do, if that's the case. So as she was given a complete choice on being an equal partner, instead she chose to be completely deferential. She agreed with everything, and this is a key, but acted on nothing. Here are some things to watch out for in dealing with passive people if you tend to be passive yourself. Note that when two passive people interact, often nothing gets decided. You need to consciously assert yourself and hold the other person accountable for asserting himself or herself, or chances are neither of you will get anything close to what you wanted. An example here might be, it's Friday afternoon, you go home, you don't want to cook, and you say to that person closest to you, you want to go out for dinner? And they say, yeah. And the inevitable next question is, where do you want to go? And the inevitable next answer is, I don't know, I don't care. So then we try real hard. What kind of food would you like? And again you get,
I don't care.
I don't care. Now, 20 minutes has gone by. The rumbling is going. You know that they're hungry, but neither of you want to say, it's Italian tonight. So you play this little dance. And the dance says, I don't know, I don't care, Italian, sure, it's fine with me, hate garlic, but what the heck? Or a Chinese, yeah, but what about MSG? And nobody talks about choice. The things to watch out for in dealing with passive people, if you tend to be aggressive, are, and we've already talked about this one, rolling right over them. It's easier. I don't have to deal with them. I don't have to beg. I don't have to plead. Do you want garlic? What do you want? What do you want to eat? So it's just that we're doing Italian. I feel like it. Get in the car. You don't want Italian? Don't get in the car. I'm gone. I'll see you in an hour. It's easier that way. And yet, it probably doesn't make for a good time an hour later once you come back. And the example we just saw with Michelle and Sandra, had Michelle been aggressive with Sandra and heard Sandra's reluctance to choose tasks, Michelle could have easily rolled right over Sandra's obvious reluctance. She could have assigned her one group of tasks and moved on to the next item of business on her desk. Had she given Sandra the wrong task, would Sandra have given anywhere close to 100%? No, certainly not. Do you sense any possibility that Sandra could have chosen a get-even mentality if she didn't like the tasks she had been assigned to?
Oh, yeah.
Sure, and in fact, she said, I don't really like dealing with the sales reps. So had she been given that task, maybe she wouldn't have dealt with them real well. Makes sense. Passive behavior invites aggressive responses. Chances are that if you tend to be aggressive, passive people will irritate you. Remember that you need to help them speak up for what they want, because if you don't, they may become passive-aggressive and get even with you later. As a wrap-up, why are passive people passive? Number one, because they are afraid. Their fear can be reality-based, but most of the time it just isn't. Next, their tunnel training gave them no other experience than to be passive in order to keep their friends and to avoid potentially painful conflict. Passive people often manage to avoid responsibility, which means they are seldom held accountable for the results of their actions. Let's see how we apply those 5 key assertiveness skills when we deal with aggressive behavior. Turn to page 20 in your workbook and again complete this exercise, choosing the type of response that would give you the best possible chance of success. Write 3 or 4 sentences in your response that demonstrate how you would use the skill or the skills that you chose as the best answer. Now here's what you need to watch for and to remember. Aggressive people are those who expect others to meet their needs at any cost. They feel perfectly free to violate other people's rights. In fact, they don't really care about other people's rights. Aggressive people are interested in winning. They keep score. They're usually very insecure people, and they bolster themselves by running over others. Again, as you watch this situation, ask yourself which of the 5 techniques, declaration, confrontation, compromise, camouflage, or accountability, would be best for dealing with this person.
No. What we wanted, what we specifically asked for, was the larger pane windows on the south side of the building.
We need a lot of light there.
I thought I made it quite clear to both of you that I am designing this building.
This is our building, Peter. We're the ones who have to work there.
Do you have to second guess me every time I turn around? I got 25 years in this business, and I built a lot of offices much nicer than yours with no problems. So take my advice or find yourself another builder.
How many of you have had to deal with people like this? Professional life, personal life, we have people who put those kinds of responses in our faces. Although Peter is not your boss, he does have authority. He has experience. In fact, he may know more than you do. But because of that experience, does that give him the right to treat you as if you had no rights? What's the best way to deal with this person? And the truth is, the right way could be any of several techniques. Probably the best would have been a combination of accountability and confrontation. Let's look at how that one might work.
So take my advice or find yourself another builder.
This is our building, and we have a right to have it the way we want it.
I got a reputation. And some of the things you want, I don't believe are necessary.
And as Elizabeth just said, this is our building, not yours. Now look, we don't want to lose you as our builder. But on the other hand, if you can't handle reasonable requests or questions from time to time, maybe we should find someone else. That choice, Peter, is yours.
The response you just saw focuses on stopping Peter's aggressive behavior and on getting the discussion back on track. Had you chosen simply a declaration that may have sounded like, "I don't like the way you're talking to me," would that have been effective in dealing with a truly aggressive person? No, probably not, exactly. In a declaration, you would have chosen your language and your thoughts without affecting any change in the behavior and thoughts of the person that you are paying to do the work for you. And in fact, there were declarations as a part in each style. If either Elizabeth or Scott had stopped with that simple declaration, there would be no motivation for Peter to change his attitude or his behavior. What about compromise? How many of you today chose compromise as your primary assertive skill? Okay, and I'd like to have some of the sentences you used to project that compromise stance. Who would give me your actual statements? Lori, what did you say?
I said, I know you have 25 years in this business. However, these are our needs. Now, how can we work together to meet them?
Certainly. And that compromise is going to allow both people to get a piece of what they want. One, the builder to be paid, and two, the people whose building it is to get what they ordered and are paying for. I think compromise makes some sense here. Who else? Amy, what did you say?
I have, okay, Peter, we understand that you've already done the windows and other details to your liking, and that's okay because of with your professionalism, but on the other hand, we are the supervisors and managers of the building, and from this point on, we would like the rest of the details done to our liking. Is that something that will work with you?
So what you did, and this is interesting, you made the compromise based on what's already there and for future. And again, as a compromise, that makes sense. Very, very good. The truth is, on the large points, you're not willing to compromise. You want things to be as you ordered them and to be delivered in an acceptable manner. Neither of these 2 points are negotiable as major points. Had you chosen camouflage, again remembering that that style is used primarily for avoidance, the non-response level would have allowed Peter to continue his obnoxious behavior. In other words, you would have allowed him to win with no consequences for that behavior. Had the second level of camouflage been used, which is limited response, you could have chosen to accept one piece of the inappropriate message and allowed the others to slide. Again, you're paying for the building and not getting all that you have paid for. Had you chosen the third level of camouflage, which is clouding, you would have responded to the attack offering absolutely nothing in the way of direction or accountability to the builder for how you're being treated. Now, it's important to note that this is not to say that clouding can never be used when dealing with an aggressive person. In fact, clouding is an effective strategy for de-escalating the tensions that can flare up in situations like this. It's just not the best long-term strategy and would not produce a resolution as quickly as accountability or confrontation. In dealing with this situation, you're choosing to build by your plans and by your direction. Anything short of confrontation or accountability would diminish these choices. Now let's review what we know about aggressive people. Do you believe that Peter, the builder, was aggressive? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Did you hear any of the vocal cues that would indicate that Peter's demeanor was aggressive? What did you hear this time? Terry, what did you hear?
He said, "I am the expert."
He said, "I am the expert." Terry, what did that imply?
That they didn't know what they were talking about.
Absolutely. That not only did they not know as much as he did, the builder, with how many years of experience? 25. We all heard that number loud and clear, but it also implied that you don't know squat. And if you don't know what you want, and I have 25 years, wouldn't it be just easier if you just shut up and I do my work wherever I want to put my windows? Good listening. What else did you hear? Beverly?
He threatened to walk off the job.
So he threatened them. He who has been hired, he who is getting paid by them, is threatening them. Is that something that an aggressive person will do? Yes. Often? Yes. Has one ever done that to you? Yes. You bet. And on occasion when it happens, because we're caught off guard, we can have a tendency to let it happen. Let's go further with this. It's important to examine our specific responses in dealing with aggressive people if you tend to be passive. As I said earlier, passive behavior invites aggressive response. So if you tend to be passive, you need to deal very directly with aggressive people. In fact, you need to behave in a way that may feel aggressive to you, even though it is assertive. Remember that if assertive behavior is not the normal tunnel, and let me stop here. What do I mean by normal tunnel? In fact, what do I mean by tunnel? That's where you learned what?
Behavior.
Good, how to behave, absolutely. What else? How to respond, yeah, and
Who you are.
and who we are. We learned how to be our composite in that tunnel. So again, back up with me, that if we indeed begin to behave assertively and that wasn't comfortable for us or was alien to our tunnel, then in truth, because we've been taught in that tunnel, if we're passive, that standing up for ourselves is not good and is in fact probably bad. That anything short of remaining passive is undesirable. Aggressive people often respond very well to others who stand up to them. And in fact, they may stop bullying you once you stand your ground. Now, note, that doesn't mean they will stop bullying, but it may very well mean that they will take those bully tactics somewhere else. Actually, somewhere that it will work, since obviously now it won't work with you. Here are some things to watch out for in dealing with aggressive people if you tend to be aggressive yourself. The number one may be escalation. When two aggressive people interact in an aggressive style, both people get tougher and tougher and tougher. As an example, if you're 27 miles over the speed limit and you're pulled over by a law enforcement officer who is, of course, doing his or her job, and that officer asks to see your license, you have two major responses to choose from. Number one, hand over the paperwork, take your medicine, and move on, or you could choose aggressiveness. In that response, which may sound like, hey, it's a clear day. Nobody's on the road. This car is built for speed. What's your problem? Nobody to have coffee with? If the officer then chooses to escalate, which they probably would, their voices would become stronger, their gaze would become sterner, and they would, one more time, just to be kind, one more time they would say, I asked for your driver's license and registration. If again, you choose to maintain your aggressiveness, you could respond with, no, there's no need here. That officer will escalate the confrontation by saying something like, sir, I'd like you to step out of the car. And if you're still escalating, or let me put it a different way, if you're still being stupid, your answer again might be no, make me. For this escalation to continue, which I pretty will guarantee at that point it will, what do you bet is the next response by the officer? In fact, will he or she make you get out of the car? Oh, yes. You bet, of course. Now, In this situation, that officer is escalating as well he or she should for protection. This is something they are taught to do. Is it in your best interest to escalate a situation that you know you cannot win? Does that make sense for you?
No.
In fact, when two aggressive people get into a conflict, the result is usually either escalation, as we just saw, or one dropping back and becoming passive-aggressive. In the situation you just saw, if the builder had chosen to become passive-aggressive, what could he have done to get back at Elizabeth and Scott? Any thoughts on how he could have gotten back?
Crooked windows.
Good for you. Crooked windows, you bet, and saying, thought they were okay for me, not a problem. Any others? What else could he do?
Good. Charge them more?
Charge them more, or at minimum, not paid attention to keeping costs down. Because after all, it's not his money. Sure, exactly. Can you think of any others that we have certainly read about in the paper that builders have been known to do to covertly get back at an over-involved owner or manager?
Using cheap materials?
And maybe even charging you for the more expensive ones. We also need, when dealing with aggressive people, if we are aggressive, to give the other person time to talk, to acknowledge what they say, and to use the assertive skill of compromise when appropriate. Using that to try to arrive at an outcome in which neither person loses and both people get some of what they want. As a wrap-up, why are aggressive people aggressive? And in fact, what does it get them?
Power.
It gets them power. It gets them being feared, as you were relating to. And because it gets them what they want. If you roll over and die, what do they get? Real simple. Everything they want. When you use skills like confrontation and accountability, you're drawing a line in the sand and making your power, your rights, and what you want equal to theirs. It's always important to remember that when doing this assertively, you diminish the chances of escalation or sabotage. So your assertive goal becomes taking back your power, ending your fear, and getting that which you want.
This is the end of Side 7 of this special career track presentation, Assertive Communication Skills. Welcome to Side 8 of Assertive Communication Skills with author and presenter Carol Price. Once again, here's Carol.
Passive-aggressive people are those who, for one reason or another, do not feel free to act out their aggressions overtly. They collect real or imagined slights and get even later. Passive-aggressive people want to even the score and get their power back. They're essentially interested in winning now or later. Let's look at an example of a passive-aggressive person in action. Please turn to page 21 in your workbook and choose the best assertive technique from the 5. And again, remember, they are declaration, confrontation, compromise, camouflage, and accountability, and choose the one that would allow you the greatest measure of success. In addition, please write 3 to 4 sentences for each of the techniques that you could use in response to Tom. Write 1 sentence for the technique that you would not use as your primary choice, but still know could be used.
I think she's doing a good job. She may be new to managing, but she's been in our department 5 years, so she really knows what's going on.
Ooh, do I hear somebody bucking for Teacher's Pet of the Week?
What, and take the honors away from you, Tom?
Look, I'm just telling you, you know how it is when somebody with no experience gets promoted. Donna will all of a sudden become some management genius. She won't care about our input or opinion. Donna's gonna manage this department right into the ground. That's the way it is. When some people get promoted, they quickly forget what it's really all about.
What are the best techniques for dealing with this situation? Probably the best response, as with the aggressive person, would be a combination again of confrontation and accountability. How many of you chose those two together? Sure, very good. Let's look at that response.
Good morning. I hope you both had a nice weekend.
Oh, yeah, Donna.
By the way, I heard what you said, Tom, about people forgetting things once they get promoted. I just want you to know I have a great memory, so you don't have to worry.
Well, Donna, you may have misunderstood what I was trying to say.
I'm very good at understanding things, too. So if you have a problem with anything I do, I need you to come to me directly about it and not take grand slams here in the break room. If I don't hear from you, I'm going to assume that everything is fine. I know your individual levels of performance, what your best is, and that's what I'm going to expect.
If you did choose confrontation and accountability, were your sentences much different than Donna's? Did we have any different sentences here?
No.
Pretty much the same, because they were pretty straightforward. Did you see those sentences being effective with Tom?
Yes.
Sure. How many of you chose declaration as your primary response? I expected not to have answers on that one in the affirmative, because very simply, that wouldn't have been enough. We needed to make Tom accountable for what he said so that he isn't going to do it, what? Again. A declaration wouldn't have stopped Tom from doing that again. How many of you chose compromise as the technique you would have used? Good. And again, I'm seeing a lot of head shaking no. What about camouflage? How many of you chose that response? Had a couple of people choose camouflage. What were the sentences that you used? Jeff, what'd you say?
Well, I actually chose a non-response response.
Sure.
And chose to make direct eye contact with Don and let him know that I didn't appreciate what was being said.
And when you did that, would you have done it at the time you heard the remark?
Yes.
Okay. So somehow placing yourself again in front of Tom so that you could turn around and just let him know, or wait till at least he looked around, or make a noise with the door?
Well, actually, I should go back. I wrote down I would interject with an interruptive hello and then make that eye contact with
very
Don.
good. So, hello, nice to see you, and I know what you said.
Right.
All right, good, good. Okay, I'll take that one. How about there was one other sentence that was different? Yes.
I was a non-response also.
And again, reason?
Basically, like Jeff, I thought that if he had seen me, would have kind of maybe wondered if I had heard him, and that sort of guilt would have kept him from doing it again.
So managing by guilt, you bet. Yeah. And in that situation, that may have shut him up because he wasn't sure what you heard. Okay, all right, I'll accept that. What level of camouflage of the three, if we are going to choose it, would be the most effective? We have two people here saying non-response. Would any of you think, if you had chosen camouflage, that you could have used either of those other two? And what were they? Quick review. Limited response. So to a piece of it, in fact, she used a bit of a limited response in responding to just snippets of what Tom said with accountability. And the third kind of camouflage was? Yeah. Do you see any reason to use clouding here? No. So if you're going to use camouflage, the most logical would be at this point using that non-response. Could Donna have then left it just as it was? For some of you, you might choose to do that because you don't want what? A confrontation. Would she have had the best chance possible of stopping Tom's future behavior by letting it go without accountability?
No.
Yeah. And what happens is Tom might feel licensed to do it again because he's got half a chance that Donna didn't hear him, and again, the guilt you talked about, half a chance that she did. When we use accountability, there is no margin for error. We know what he said, and we know we're going to talk to him about it. Yes, please.
And I also think by confronting, if she did decide to confront, she did it also where that other lady was standing there, and they're going to know she's the type that is able to confront and get things out in the open, and they might get word back to other people that she's just not going to have that kind of...
So your assumption is that people will talk about this? Yeah. And in fact, that word will spread, exactly. So Donna may get fewer and fewer encounters that are uncomfortable because she's setting a precedent, saying that if you do this, this is how I will respond. Very, very good point. Now let's review what we know about passive-aggressive people. Number one, they don't have the guts to come right out and confront, so instead they act as snipers, using sarcasm, sneers, and that snide remark. They try to wiggle out of any accountability of anything they said or did, as in, I don't think you understood what I meant. As a note, do you think Donna understood exactly what Tom meant? Yeah. Of course. They love talking behind your back to draw an audience, but then back down when confronted. Sometimes they use sarcasm as sport just to get a reaction. And remember that passive-aggressive people can demonstrate both passive and aggressive behaviors at different times. When he was talking to Mary, Tom was taking the aggressive stance. He had no fear of his boss because he had no accountability for what he was saying. On the other hand, when Donna confronted him, he immediately took on passive traits. Did any of you hear him sigh? Do you hear people around you, when caught, do the same kind of sighing? Did you hear the verbiage that backed up those bodily cues, and what might that verbiage be?
You must have misunderstood.
You must have misunderstood. Whoa, we know he didn't. We know she didn't. We know they meant exactly what they were saying. What tone of voice was Tom using in the break room just with his friend? He was loud, and did you hear that whiny voice that we all adore working next to whenever we have the opportunity? And he also attacked Donna's character. Now, in the passive stance, he immediately tried to avoid confrontation by, again, backpedaling. As you said, you must have misunderstood me. Well, again, when it was obvious, she hadn't. His voice got softer, and his words became fewer. In other words, he shut up when he was caught, but certainly was willing to talk a lot when he had no accountability. Here are the things to watch out for in dealing with passive-aggressive people if you tend to be passive. Number one, their sniping may wear you down to the point where you feel defeated. Be careful to not let that happen. Respond to them actively. Call them on their sniping remarks by saying, and I'm going to give you a couple here and I'd like you to write them, by saying, number one, I don't understand what you meant. certainly placing accountability for an explanation. Or, did you mean to be sarcastic? Again, certainly making them accountable. And the greatest accountability words in the universe, they are, note, must be used in a questioning tone. They are the two simple words, excuse me. And when we use them with a question at the end, they sound like, excuse me? And what occurs in response is the person who is inappropriate. Remember, they don't come right out and get you. They do it in a covert way. When we do that, excuse me, they are then needing to respond either exactly the same way, as if you didn't hear them, or changing it to make it more appropriate. Which way do you bet they would respond? Would they change it, or would they do the obnoxious behavior again? What do you think?
Change it.
Absolutely, they would change it. We have to hold them accountable. Don't let the behavior slip by a single time, because success will make the passive-aggressive much bolder. These are things to watch out in dealing with a passive-aggressive if you tend to be aggressive, and the number one is violence. Actually, passive-aggressive people may bring out the worst in you. You may lose your temper and escalate conflict with them to the point where you can't control your impulse to do something rash. You must calm yourself. A more effective strategy for dealing with the passive-aggressive is to confront them directly, asking again, what did you mean by that? And then holding them accountable for asking what they want. Tell them directly that you cannot be held accountable for them not getting what they want if they don't speak up. Passive-aggressive people prefer to hide. When you blow their cover, they have to deal with you. In all of these scenarios, you'll find a common thread. Communicating directly, asking for what you want, and asking others to do the same. That is the essence of assertiveness. In closing, you have choices at any point during a conflict. Sometimes a good run is better than a bad stand, as my grandma used to say. You can assertively choose not to stand up for yourself as long as you're making a conscious, considered choice, and as long as that choice serves your interests. The first choice you have in any situation is stopping the interaction. In other words, you can decide that you want to leave. That's where the risk process is very important. If you're risking safety, physical or financial, the decision to leave can often be the logical and deliberate one. The key is you are choosing to stop. The second option is when you are willing to continue the interaction without control of direction. And that's where you can actually decide to be a victim. If after weighing your choices, being a victim is the best short-run solution. Putting up with a loud, obnoxious boss for only 3 more weeks until that boss retires may serve you well in the long term. And third, you may be willing to continue the interaction only if it is solution-oriented. For example, I am willing to continue working in this department only if the equipment is brought out of the dark ages. In looking at all your choices in life, you always have these 3 options. Make the choices you need to make for yourself. Make that assertive choice. You owe it to yourself. I'd like to leave you with a poem. It's called The Choice by Jim Martin. And I'd like you to listen to it and see if it doesn't embody all that we've talked about for you being comfortable and successful in everyday existence. To be brief and brilliant or long-lasting and dull, to be soft and supple or hard and rigid, to be warm and caring or cold and indifferent, to be alive and embrace life fully, or to exist and dread living, to be courageous with life, taking each day as it comes, or cowardly and plan each move of each day of our lives in the name of security, to be in the driver's seat of our lives with the vehicle of self under our control, or a frustrated, pessimistic passenger in the hands of a reckless, unknown, unseen driver. To be who we are or who we are told we must be. To be as we perceive ourselves or as others perceive us. To be the unique, individualistic, self-determining entity that we are, or to be a victim at the mercy of the immortal snatcher of self-worth. The choice is simple. You choose.
This concludes our feature presentation of Assertive Communication Skills with author-presenter Carol Price. In just a moment, we'll present a brief bonus excerpt of a closely related program. But first, for a free catalog containing information about Career Track seminars or audio and video tape programs, please call toll-free at 1-800-334-1018 in North America. If you live outside this area, please write to us at the address on the back of your tape package. And now, here is Dr. Rick Brinkman with a special bonus excerpt of Career Track's Dealing with Difficult People.
Let's define difficult people right off the bat. They're the people who don't do what you want them to do and do what you don't want them to do, and then you don't know what to do about it.
Of course, everybody can be difficult some of the time, but we're talking really difficult, like in these situations.
Ever gotten to work with a chronic complainer?
I'm doing the work of 2 people. I'm underpaid and I'm overworked. They never tell me what I need to know. No one's interested anyway. Even if I did do it that way, it wouldn't matter because someone else would interfere with it. I mean, what difference does it make how hard I try? No one tells me anything around here. And then they expect me to take care of something that isn't even my problem. It just isn't fair. How hard do I have to work?
Ever deal with a know-it-all?
Laboratory tests indicate that the white blood cell count is elevated. We're seeing the usual anemia. Liver function tests are abnormal, including serum bilirubin, SGOT, SGPT, and serum alkaline phosphatase. In theory, the treatment is straightforward, though often difficult. Stop drinking, a nutritious diet, perhaps some corticosteroids to control the hepatitis.
Dr. Leavitt, sir, is there something we can do to support the return of liver function? I was reading about the amino acid L-carnitine, and I read...
Well, have you been hanging out in health food stores again? Let's hear no more nonsense from you. As I said, the treatment is straightforward. Next case.
We've seen what happens when a supervisor runs a department like some kind of dictator.
I'm sorry. I had fully intended to...
You would have those rebels on my desk by this morning.
That's true, but sir, I would...
hate inefficiency.
Oh, please, sir.
Send in my next appointment.
These are only a few of the examples of the kinds of difficult people and difficult situations that you'll learn to deal with more effectively. We're going to assume that your difficult people aren't listening to this program. That leaves what happens next in your hands. Because when dealing with a difficult person, it seems that you have 4 basic options. You can stay and do nothing at all, except keep complaining.
Or you can decide that the benefits of your job or relationship are worth enough to you that you're willing to accept your difficult person as they are.
Or you can change your attitudes and behaviors in order to change your relationship with your difficult person, which is what this program is all about.
Or you can leave. Not every situation is resolvable, even if you've tried everything. Removing yourself is a real option. Are the benefits of dealing with this difficult person worth the sacrifice in the quality of your life? If not, you have the freedom to vote with your feet. But don't go just yet.
By listening to this program, you are greatly increasing your chance for success in dealing effectively with your difficult people. Congratulations. Since difficult people can be so disruptive to your plans and thoughts, here are 3 basic steps for staying on track so that you can effectively deal with difficult people. Number 1, know what you want. Number 2, pay attention. Number 3, be flexible.
It's important to know what you want. I once worked with a guy named Stuart the yard foreman. Every day, day after day, he would open his lunchbox, remove a sandwich, unwrap it, look at it, and scrunch up his face. And then he'd say, peanut butter again. And then he'd eat it. I'll tell you something. After 2 months, he'd had all the peanut butter I could take. I said, Stuart, if you don't like peanut butter sandwiches, why don't you get your wife to make you something different? And his face crinkled up and he said, my wife? I make these sandwiches. Now, I told this experience to a traveling comedian back in the 70s, and next thing I know, there's people telling it like a joke, only they said it was baloney. Well, it wasn't. It was true. And I learned something from Stuart. I learned that if all you know is what you don't want with those difficult people, you're going to get peanut butter again and again and again.
Peanut butter like, I don't want to get angry. I don't want to get upset. I don't want them to do that. And what happens? You get angry, you get upset, and they probably do that anyway. Here's how to make sure your direction is positive. First, listen for the peanut butter in your own thoughts and conversation. When you hear these negatives, immediately substitute what you do want in their place. For example, the next time he doesn't have that report done when he said he would, I don't want to get so frustrated that I lose my temper. What do I want? I want to remain calm and use the strategy for dealing effectively with a yes person. Or, there she goes again, overriding my input with her expert opinion. I don't want her to keep doing this to me. What do I want? I want to assertively and effectively stand up for my rights. I want her to examine my point of view for its merits. This will help you keep your mind aimed in a useful direction, which is the first step to effectiveness in dealing with a difficult person.
Once you have your general direction, the next thing to do is get specific about it. How do you do that? You ask yourself questions until you can mentally see, hear, and feel the details of what you want from yourself in dealing with a difficult person.
All right, my direction is to have confidence. Well, more specifically, how will I act that will be more confident? I think the next time he interrupts me, I'll breathe deeply and say assertively, I'm not finished yet, please.
Keep asking yourself for more specifics.
Like, what do I mean by assertively? How will my voice tone be? Like this? Like this? Like this? How will my face look? Where's that mirror?
That's getting specific about what you want. The moment that a person has a vision of what they want tomorrow, they can begin to change the way they are today. You may have heard that proverb, where there is no vision, the people perish. Knowing what you want is important in dealing with difficult people, because this will keep you from perishing. From here on out, if you catch yourself thinking that you don't want something, ask yourself if you know what you do want to have happen, and be specific. Of the 3 steps for staying on track in dealing with difficult people, the first step is having a direction that is positive and specific.
Effectiveness step number 2 is called paying close attention.
To be an effective communicator, you must pay close attention to what you're actually seeing, hearing, and doing. And that may not be your normal response to a difficult person. That's because we've all made certain assumptions during the course of our lives about what it means when people look a certain way, or sound a certain way, or say certain words. These assumptions can have a negative influence on our perceptions and prevent our paying close attention. Here's an example of what happens when we pay attention to our assumptions instead of what is actually taking place.
A couple once came to me for therapy, Jeff and Kathy. Jeff tells me Kathy never listens when things are important, just like a woman. How's that for a small assumption? Then she says, hey, he's always getting angry for no reason at all, just like a man. That's another assumption they add to their relationship. I pay close attention because I know what I want. I want to see how this difficulty works, and I find out something very interesting. I discover that when Jeff listens to people talk, he's missed their eye contact. Yet when Kathy listens to people talk, she's missed floor contact, missed ceiling contact, missed nail contact, anything but you. Yet if I ask her what she heard, She repeats it back to me like a tape recorder. So here's how it works. Jeff comes home, he says, Kathy, I've got something important to tell you, blah, 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 blah. Hearing that it's important automatically triggers her into a listening posture, looking down. And then he stops, seeing that she's not listening, because, hey, everybody knows, when a person listens, they look you in the eye. Commandment number 11. He knows what he wants, her attention. He's going to be flexible. So he raises the volume of his voice a little. Kathy, this is important, blah, 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 blah. Now, she doesn't understand why he's repeating himself. She doesn't want to start any trouble, though. She better really listen. So she covers her eyes so she can concentrate. He sees this. He knows he doesn't want to get angry. He better be a little more flexible to get her attention. So he raises the volume of his voice a little bit louder. Kathy, this is important, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, her unconscious mind is monitoring the volume changes and begins to send her conscious mind a message. And the message sounds like this. We are under attack. Prepare to defend. She battens down the hatches. She's no longer listening. He's angry. And they've both proven themselves right about their assumptions. But they weren't right to begin with. It took them 5 seconds to go from 0 to right. Of course, they'd only been married for 3 years. Give them a little more time, they'll speed it up. You know how it is. One flicker of an eyelash, and it's Beirut in the kitchen.
That's because we, the people, make a lot of assumptions about each other. Now you might begin to wonder, what assumptions do you make about people based on the way they look to you? When you pay attention to your difficult person, what do you see them doing that causes you difficulty? Is there a certain facial expression? Perhaps a gesture, like pointing a finger at you. Maybe they don't look when you speak. Maybe they have a posture that you react to, like standing over you while you work. Unless you set aside those assumptions, you may never find out what's really going on.
Jeff's assumption that when people listen, they look you in the eye kept him from ever asking Kathy if she was listening. I was able to find out in 15 minutes what he'd been blind to for 3 years.
You might also ask yourself, how do I look to other people? What assumptions do people make about me based on my appearance? Because maybe that has something to do with the way they respond to you.
Another aspect of communication is what it sounds like. We make a lot of assumptions based on what we hear.
When you pay attention to your difficult person, what assumptions do you make about the way they sound? What do you hear them doing that causes you difficulty? Is there a certain voice tone? Perhaps a volume change, like screaming at you or whining. Maybe their tone doesn't match their words. Your reaction to the sound of their communication could prevent you from hearing what they're really saying.
Kathy heard a volume and tonal shift and jumped to the conclusion that he was getting angry, rather than asking, why is he repeating himself?
You might also ask yourself, how do I sound to other people? What assumptions do people make about me based on the sound of my voice? Because maybe that has something to do with the way they respond to you.
And that still leaves the actual words we use to communicate.
When you pay attention to your difficult person, what assumptions do you make about the meaning of their words? What do you hear them saying that causes you difficulty? Is there a certain phrase or word? Maybe they don't answer your questions. Maybe they have a label for you that you react to, like, hey, Moose. You might also ask yourself, what other meanings could they make out of my words? What might they be assuming about me?
These questions and more will be answered when you pay close attention. The second step for staying on track as you effectively deal with difficult people.
This has been a special bonus excerpt of Career Track's Dealing with Difficult People with Rick Brinkman. Again, if you'd like a free catalog of all of Career Track's seminars and audio and video tape programs, please call 1-800-334-1018. Thanks for listening.